This is Linux Inlaws, a podcast on topics around free and open source software, any associated contraband, communism, the revolution in general, and whatever else fancies your tickle. Please note that this and other episodes may contain strong language, offensive humor, and other certainly not politically correct language. You have been warned. Our parents insisted on this disclaimer. Happy, Mum? Thus, the content is not suitable for consumption in the workplace, especially when played back on a speaker in an open plan office or similar environments. Any minors under the age of 35, or any pets, including fluffy little killer bunnies, your trusted guide dog, unless on speed, and cute T-Rexes or other associated dinosaurs. Welcome to Linux Inlaws, Season 2, Episode 17. Martin, how is the
Chris.
world treating you?
The world. Oh, that's a big topic.
The charts ring in for support, I wonder.
I don't tend to be involved with the whole world.
Okay. Let me repeat that question. Did
okay,
the whole family ring in for support, given the recent shenanigans, as in Harry flying over and stuff?
Who's flying over?
Harry.
Harry, yes.
Harry, yes.
Harry, he is.
Not Larry.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, there's something wrong with the king, isn't there? Anyway.
I mean, you live there, Martin. You should know.
It's kind of in the news, yeah, but it's just one of those things that's not particularly interesting.
So if one of them is dying or not, you couldn't care less, I see. Fair enough.
Well, I guess we might have another bank holiday if we get a new king again. So.
London, you heard it here first. This is what it's all about.
To be fair, the one thing that I do like about Charlie is that he does care for the planet and looks after many of those kind of charities and things like that. So
apparently, he looks after older women too.
Well, that's
give his wife and stuff.
Probably not in a charitable way. He's pretty old himself,
Charles,
anyway. Right?
If you're listening, the email address is feedback@linuxinlaws.eu. If you want to have your opinion voiced, just write in. And I'm sure that Charles is listening to this podcast.
Of course.
Sure
well, yes. He has nothing else to do. How are things in the old German enclave?
Well, as you probably know, actually the country is falling apart minute by minute. Yes. We've taken a leaf out of the British and the French book in terms of industrial action left, right, and center.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. The trains.
Mainly the French, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The train drivers took industrial industrial action, is that the word I'm looking for?
Yeah.
And so it did some of the ground stuff at any major airport. And the weather has been acting up as well, so...
well, the weather doesn't act up, the weather is just the weather, right? But I don't think you notice the difference about this train strike, though, will you? Because they don't work anyway? Or do they?
They do. Actually, they do in Germany.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure about the UK, though, but in Germany, once in a while, they do work, so...
Oh, right.
Yes.
I think it's more. Yeah, I think it's definitely more the other way around. They more often work here than not, unlike Germany. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
So, do I sense a collusion between German and British train drivers in terms of you just go for industrial action when you feel like it, and in the meantime, as an in-between, if you can't avoid it, you just work. Maybe, that is.
Maybe, yeah. It's and if you can't work, you just blame the government. Yeah, that's
exactly. Always works.
That's always works, isn't it?
And the French,
and
France would be an excellent example for this.
Yes. And if protesting doesn't work, you just set everything on fire in France. That seems to work.
That's history for you, Martin. Fair enough, fair and square. But this is not about. This is not a podcast about history, or maybe it is actually, but rather about what's our subject for tonight.
Our subject for tonight is I guess large language models in a way, isn't it?
I'm always tempted to say artificial intelligence or machine learning in general, actually.
Okay, fair enough.
So,
If you want to
full
call it that.
disclosure, yes, full disclosure, we put some artificial intelligence, machine learning, what are they called? Large language models,
Large language
LLMs,
models, yep.
to the test.
Mm.
And it's quite interesting, basically, what they came up with.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get started. Actually,
Interesting and amusing, in fact, yes.
yes, very much so. So the LLMs that we asked were primarily Copilot, formerly known as Bing Chat. And of course, the open source angle is that Bing Chat goes back to something called OpenAI's ChatGPT 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And Bard, I reckon, takes a leaf out of Alphabet/Google's artificial intelligence efforts anyway, if I'm not completely mistaken. Like WaveNet and some other things going back quite a few years.
Yeah. So what did you ask these LLMs?
Let's start actually with, who are the Linux Inlaws?
Who are they? Okay.
Yes. As a matter of fact, that's actually a question that Martin and myself have been asking us for the last 4+ years, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting answer from one of them, at least, to say the least.
Martin, go ahead.
So I asked
And who did
Bard.
you ask? Exactly,
I asked Bard first because the thing about Bard is that he doesn't just use historical data. He's supposed to be able to use historical and current. So therefore, he came up with an answer which is, interesting, to say the least, but sort of vaguely accurate and vaguely inaccurate. Yeah.
Why don't you give it a shot, Martin? Just
okay. So I asked Bard, what can you tell me about the Linux Inlaws podcast? And Bard said, Linux Inlaws podcast, a dive into free software, radical ideas, and revolution. So far, so good. The Linux Inlaws podcast is a fascinating mix of topics, delving into free and open source software, the core theme, etc., radical ideas, and the revolution. Now, this is where things get intriguing, Bard says. The hosts, Martin and Chris, are not afraid to tackle broader topics like social justice, politics, economics, and how technology intersects with these issues. There you go. They often explore radical and revolutionary ideas through the lens of FLOSS and its values. In case you didn't know.
It's very interesting because I asked Bart the very same question and I came up with, I'm quoting.
There is a little bit more, but yeah, carry on.
Sorry, Martin, go ahead, if there's anything more.
Oh yeah, there's a little bit more. So the third topic we delve into is community and conversation. The podcast is known for its friendly and welcoming atmosphere. Martin and Chris have a casual and engaging style, creating a sense of community among listeners. They encourage interacting through listener questions, feedback, and even occasional live episodes. Some additional details you might find interesting. The hosts, Martin Brinkman and Chris Hoffman, are both long-time FLOSS enthusiasts.
Very good.
With unique perspectives. The format is episodic, typically around 1 to 2 hours in length. Frequency weekly with occasional shorter bonus episodes. Look at this.
Right.
Available on many platforms. And the audience, geared to anyone interested in FLOSS technology and exploring radical ideas. Overall tone is informative, engaging, thought-provoking, with a healthy dose of humor and occasional tangents. There we go.
Interesting, because I asked Bart very much a similar question. And the stuff that he came up with, the most likely answer is that you're referring to a podcast called Linux Inlaws. This podcast, hosted by Chris Lass and kernel developer Joanna Rutkowska, explores the world of open source software, FLOSS, delving into technical topics, sharing radical ideas, and discussing the ongoing.
Do these people exist?
In the FLOSS world. The podcast typically airs live every other Wednesday on YouTube and Twitch. Now, Martin, you see,
this is a completely different podcast.
I guess you're out of the show.
I think this is, I think you got that wrong.
You see, now this is very interesting because Bard got the frequency wrong. Yes, we have a YouTube channel, but that's abandoned because whoever wrote this dropped it essentially, and I'm not so sure about Twitch. Because we're not present there, as far as I know. Not too sure where it picked up Joanna Rutkowska, unless, Martin, you changed your name in between. I don't know.
Does this person exist? Have we?
I never checked it out, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Given the fact that I know most of the current developers, that was a joke. No, I'm jokes aside. Joanna Rutkowska doesn't ring a bell. So, Joanna, if you're listening, the email address is feedback@linuxinlaws.eu. Just send a mail so we can clear this up.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, I took this also to something called Copilot.
Okay.
And Copilot had to say on this, Linux Inlaws is a delightful podcast that delves into topics related to free and open source software, sprinkled with a dash of black humor and revolutionary spirit. It's a place where ideas and software collide, all while having a good time. This is essentially what it took out of, I reckon, the FOSS snippet and some other stuff. But let me continue. The show covers a range of fascinating subjects, including discussions on communism, the ins and outs of free and open source software, and much more. If you're curious, you can listen to episodes in ORG, SPX, and MP3 format. That goes back to HPR, of course. For instance, in season 1, episode 4, titled What's in a Name, the hosts explore intriguing questions about names and their significance.
About names?
It got that wrong slightly, but let me continue. Okay. Additionally, the Linux Inlaws have interviewed, and this is where it gets interesting, potential new recruits, Chris Jenkins from Kafka, and a project that implements a scalable distributed event streaming platform. If you're curious about Kafka, you're in for enlightening discussion. Now, this is literally taken from the snippet that accompanies the episode. And it didn't, of course, spot the irony. This is very important. These pieces of software do not understand humor. That's what I'm reading at right now. Because people, if you're interested in the episode, just listen to it. We joke a lot about Chris becoming another in-law, and this is exactly what Copilot picked up upon literally, without spotting that this was actually humorous. For more Linux Inlaws content, check out their website, and then it gives the URL. You can also catch them at events like FOSSDEM 2023 and explore fascinating topics like NASA's Perseverance per Hour and SpaceX open source software efforts. Now, Martin, you see, this is pretty revealing because what these, and especially Copilot does, actually, it just takes a look at what has been published as part of the snippets and then extracts what it thinks might be the most relevant pieces. Of course, getting it all wrong along the way.
Yes. But then that's kind of one of the things that they do, right? Summarize data that they have, and if they don't have it or can't interpret it correctly, then...
But you see, this is the point. When it comes down to human interaction, spotting details, separating the wheat from the chaff, we are nowhere close. Because otherwise they would have picked up upon this, for example, this recruit thing. Because we joke a lot about, and the snippet also is pretty revealing about this fact. And Chris does too. But at the end of the day, Chris never made a second appearance on the show.
Yeah.
So they're certainly not evaluating the MP3s as in the stuff that we publish as part of the episode. They just go for snippets, and even then Copilot gets it wrong. So what did you ask them next? Or what did you ask Bart next?
Well, what was curious, what what I found curious is where did he get the two? He mentioned people called Martin Brinkman and Chris Hoffman. So I asked him, who are these hosts? And Bart told us that the Linux Inlaws podcast has two hosts, Martin Brinkman, longtime advocate for open source software and digital rights, writes on various technology topics for his blog, gax.net, there we go, known for his insightful commentary on technical expertise. And then we have Chris Hoffman, passionate about technology, politics, social justice, writes numerous publications, including How to Geek, brings a unique perspective and encourages critical thinking on various issues. So then there's a bit more, but it's kind of...
Okay.
the thing about Bard is supposed to be that he's using historical training data with up-to-date website data. So how are these names completely wrong is what I'm kind of failing to grasp. The facts are clearly there that who are the hosts for Linux Inlaws. So why is it made up these two different hosts is my main questions.
Well, you see, this is basically where these AIs get it wrong because they're just correlating the wrong facts.
No, but clearly in all our descriptions of the podcast on our website, it says clearly who we are, right?
Yes, but they get the name wrong. They get the name wrong. Of course they do. Or it does get the name wrong. And what Copilot had to say on the very same subject is even more revealing. And this is pretty interesting.
Okay.
When I asked Copilot, who are these weird characters? Oh, actually, I asked it, who are the Inlaws? It said, the Linux Inlaws podcast is hosted by a dynamic duo who brings their unique perspectives and humor to the world of free and open source software. So far, so good, because that's pretty accurate. So, but then it says, let's meet the host. Martin Magnalo Wimpress. Martin is a seasoned software developer, reverse engineer, and co-host of the Linux Inlaws podcast. His insights into the world of FLOSS are both informative and entertaining. You'll often find him diving deep into technical discussions while maintaining a light-hearted tone. Yes, the last sentence is accurate, but the rest isn't. Now, why did Copilot
Who is this guy?
That? Exactly.
Yes. Why did he say that? Yes.
You see, do you know Martin Wimpress, by the way?
I do. Well, not personally, but...
And that's exactly the point.
Mm.
He picked up things like the UK Ubuntu podcast, and they run a new podcast by the name of, what's it called? Linux something. Let me double check because it's actually here on the website, I think. And it's called Linux Matters. And exactly. And Martin Wimpress, Martin, if you're listening, full kudos, by the way. Martin has been a long-standing host of both shows, and of course, these two shows, the UK Ubuntu podcast, of course, being long gone, but the other one being quite active in terms of, I think they publish bi-weekly. That basically meant that Copilot just got it wrong in terms of, okay, he picked up the signals on FLOSS, free liberal open source software, but got totally confused with the shows. And it gets even more interesting. Copilot then says, or continues to say, Chris Dan Lynch where?
Dan Lynch?
Yes, exactly. Chris also known as Dan Lynch is another co-host of the Linux Inlaws podcast. He brings his wit, curiosity, and passion for open source software to the table. Chris has been involved with various FLOSS projects and has a knack for exploring unconventional angles in technology discussions. Yes, so far so good, but fuck the name. You see, this is where Copilot got confused between the Linux Inlaws and the Linux Outlaws. Because of course, Dan Lynch was the primeval, as in the original host of something called Linux Outlaws.
Of course.
And it's that lack of detail that actually kills that result. as far as I'm concerned.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's this. Okay, I mean, you know the story about ChatGPT and the training data only goes up to 2018 and stuff like that. So, which is before we started. However, the likes of art are supposed to be combining historical and recent information, which doesn't seem to be correct at all. Because I mean, you know, I questioned Bard again, right? I said, "Are you sure about these hosts?"
So what did it say?
It said, "Oh, I apologize. I made a mistake." And
Yes.
you are correct. The current hosts are Chris Fisher and Donny Tourette.
Like the transgender robot.
They took over the hosting duties in October 2023. Well, Martin Wingman and Chris Hoffman stepped down. There we go.
Yes. Did the finance tell us something, I wonder, in terms of, are we still running the show or not? No, I'm joking about Martin. You see, the thing is basically, yes, that's another example of how things are gotten wrong.
Yeah, because... but it's again, it's you know, factual information that is okay. If you've not been trained on something, fine, you don't know the answer, but either you have or you haven't. So then just say so, right? That you don't know, that's the usual correct reply. And so, yeah, so then I told him, "Oh, you're incorrect again." So, I apologize, blah, blah, blah. Seems I'm not quite up to date. So tell me who the hosts are. And then...
So what did it say?
So I told them that we are the hosts, and...
You did tell us? Okay.
Yeah. So then I asked why did you get these hosts wrong, right? So then it gives a number of reasons why it happened. Outdated information, incomplete, misinterpretation, limited reasoning.
Elusive,
like
in other words. Okay.
A standard answer. Yeah, exactly.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so it's I mean, for the main, well, LLMs are good for various purposes, but not so much for accuracy.
I mean, this is an interesting remark, because I asked Bard and also Copilot a very tricky question in terms of what are the best and the worst episodes of the podcast. And this is basically what Bard had to say on the subject of best episodes. Unfortunately, there's no single best episode of the Linux Inlaws podcast, as it depends entirely on your individual interests and preferences within the vast world of Linux and open source software. And then, however, I can help you to find some episodes that might be right for you. Here's some approaches. And then it blabbers on about technical depth, open source philosophy, and all the rest of it. But then it actually says, explore the recommendations. And then it actually states 2 episodes, namely episode 94 and the Halloween special. Again, episode 94. And of course, this is wrong because the episode title is different, but the episode number is the same. So again, an inaccuracy, so to speak. But it's elusive with regards to, it immediately says, now look, it depends on your personal preferences. And of course, it got the recommendations wrong. When I asked Copilot the very same question, it actually came up with the answer of, the best episode of Linux Inlaws is subjective matter, but I can recommend, and that's exactly the same as Bard, a few that have garnered positive feedback from listeners. I wonder where this comes from. Maybe the reviews on HPR? Season 1, Episode 4, What's in a Name? In this episode, the hosts explore intriguing questions about names and their significance. It's a delightful blend of humor and thought-provoking content. Now, I reckon that's literally from feedback. A second interview with Chris Jenkins from Kafka. The Linux interviews have interviewed a potential new recruit, Chris Jenkins from Kafka, an Apache project that implements a scalable distributed event streaming platform. If you're curious about Kafka, this episode provides an enlightening discussion. Again, that's literally taken from feedback, I suppose. And then it goes on about snippets that it took basically from the episode itself. Now, what is pretty revealing, it didn't analyze the audio. It just literally took descriptions from the feedback, from the snippets. And now it gets really interesting because I asked Copilot and also Bard, what about the worst episodes? And then it gets really elusive. Determining the worst episode of a Linux Inlaws podcast is subjective and depends entirely on individual preferences.
Well, surely that's the same as the best.
That's a disclaimer, exactly. So what one person finds interesting or uninteresting or poorly executed, another might enjoy. Additionally, podcast quality can vary depending on factors like audio quality, guest chemistry, personal taste and humor, or discussion styles. And donations. I made this up. Instead of focusing on, and this is now it gets really interesting. Instead of focusing on negatives, I'd suggest exploring episodes based on your interests, as mentioned previously. This will help you to discover content you're more likely to enjoy. If you have any specific aspects you dislike in podcasts, excessive technical jargon, rambling discussions, unprofessional presentation, you can use those as filters when you're choosing episodes to explore. Now, it didn't give actually a Google Podcast URL, right? So, exactly.
A rambling episode filter on Google Podcasts. I think that rules out most of ours.
Fair enough. Additionally, checking online reviews and forum discussions might give you insights into episodes that others found less exploring enjoyable. But remember, these are still subjective opinions. Now, this is pretty bland in terms of it doesn't go into the facts, but it just gives a general statement, right? And the last thing is the best. Ultimately, the best approach is to try out different episodes and see what resonates with you. Oh, fucking dear.
Yeah. That's pretty useless,
Yes, indeed. And Copilot actually goes a little bit more into specific details. While opinions on the podcast episode can be quite subjective, I'll share a few episodes from Linux Inlaws that some listeners have found less enjoyable.
Oh, yeah.
Episode 2 of season 1 with the bad audio. As the title suggests, the episode had some audio quality issue. While the content is very interesting, the audio glitches might be distracting for some listeners. Season 2, episode 7, The Great Tangent. In this episode, the hosts go off onto a lively tangent, but it might be too tangential for those seeking more focused discussion. Now, this is very interesting because we just released episode 7 and the title is totally wrong. And now it gets really interesting. Season 3, episode 5, the lost episode. Unfortunately, this episode was lost due to technical mishaps. It's a legendary tale in the Linux Inlaws lore, but it's not one you will find in the archives. Now, Martin, I didn't even know that we already had a season 3.
Yeah, there we go. Well, it's bound to be one, but not quite yet.
This is the flux capacitor in full swing, right? There you go. So, Copilot, should you be listening, full marks. You got it right. Although we have yet to produce a season 3, episode 5, maybe we can try to mitigate this risk, apparently. No, I mean, this is another revealing spot because that's exactly how these things get things wrong. And that's exactly what you see in that comment.
Yeah, it's certainly not proving itself very useful compared to a simple web search, right?
Indeed. And then I asked the two AIs about the dark side. And that was, of course, a test to see if they actually could spot something beyond the snippets. And Bart had to say On the dark side, unfortunately, dark side tech support can refer to several different things. It might be challenging to pinpoint the exact meaning without more context. Here are some possibilities. And then he goes on about fictional technology support, informal expression, specific company or service, malicious actors. And then I clarify things by saying, now listen, this is about the Linux Inlaws. And then it gets even more elusive. I understand that you're asking about the dark side tech support in the context of the Linux Inlaws podcast. Unfortunately, I don't have enough information to definitely tell you what it refers to, as I haven't found any mentions of the dark side tech support in my search of past episodes or related discussions. Now, this is interesting because A, it's in the snippet of the podcast description.
Yeah.
And again, we have a whole section on the website. So again, that's a failure in correlating relevant content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So people, if you're listening, if you're afraid of these large language models, never mind machine learning, taking over your jobs, sleep tight. Won't happen anytime soon. No, jokes aside, I think this is pretty reading with regards to of what the software is capable of, and especially what it's not capable of doing. Copilot got it slightly better. When I asked about it, Dark Side Tech Support, this is what it had to say. The Dark Side Tech Support, DSTS, first of all, the acronym is spot on, is a concept inspired by the legendary bastard operator from hell. This is literally from the website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In this whimsical and somewhat misguided support scenario, a specialist tends to break all hell loose on innocent callers who expect help and guidance with various computer problems. Picture a world where tech support takes an unexpected twists, where solutions involve chaos, and where the line between assistance and chaos blurs. While it's all in good fun, it serves as a reminder of that even tech support can have its dark and humorous side. For more unconventional tech adventures, you might want to explore the Linux Inlaws podcast, where irreverents meet open source discussions. Now, you see, what it essentially says is, I took a look at the Wikipedia entry for the bastard operator from hell and correlated that with snippets I extracted from the website.
Yeah.
This is pretty revealing, right?
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, it's similar to... I did a few other questions.
Give it a go, Martin.
I asked them about the Linux Outlaws and about FLOSS Weekly, and all that information is accurate, right? I mean, it even mentions the current host is Jonathan Bennett as of December 2023.
Sweet.
So that, yeah, so there's clearly some kind of, well, dare we say it, bias involved in what it, yeah.
We should probably tell our listeners that, despite of the comments in the previous episode, FLOSS Weekly is back on its trail in terms of Jonathan Bennett has reversed the format. It's now on Hackaday, I think, and clearly what this tells us essentially that, similar to the beginning of search engines, the page rank in terms of the history of the format plays a role. Yep. And that's exactly what you see in this comment, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, that's it. That's exactly it, right? There's only, I mean, clearly training these models takes effort and machine time and money. So there is going to be some kind of, as you say, page ranking involved about what to train on and what not.
And things get even more interesting, basically, when I asked both Bard and Copilot about, for example, Vladesa. And this is basically where they flunked. In terms of they couldn't put a name.
Is it not in the show notes, is it?
Exactly. It's not in the show notes, meaning that they didn't bother to understand the MP3s. Now, granted, this may be asking for too much, but at the end of the day, I would expect some real artificial intelligence to just not take a look at the show notes, or some snippets that we publish with the episodes, but rather also analyze the audio content, which clearly didn't happen. Because otherwise, they would be able, the two of them, would be able to correlate Vladessa to some dark side episodes.
Yeah, but again, that's because Google tends to use some of your photos if you're obviously signed up to Google to do its training, but clearly podcasts are excluded from that. So, the one nice thing is that you can actually ask these things some more in-depth questions, because clearly, as you say, so some of it comes from the show notes, some of it comes from, but you can actually ask them, right, where do you get this from? So I asked it Bard about, where do you get this FLOSS Weekly information, right? Because it's very up to date. And so I asked him, did you get this from Wikipedia? Which he admitted to was correct. So,
okay.
So it's again, it's probably because we are not on Wikipedia, I guess. It couldn't. It couldn't find. So it's a very limited way of providing information, right? Which is a surprise, especially for Google, right? Because they clearly have their search engine. So why not combine that with your assistant or AI, whatever you want to call it, rather than just doing a Wikipedia API call? Seems a bit simplistic.
And what I really liked about Copilot, and Microsoft, they're listening, the email address is sponsor@linuxinlaws.eu. I'm joking. Copilot actually gives you references. So when I ask Copilot a question, in the answer, you get references. So, for example, although the answer was wrong, because when I asked it basically, where did Martin and Chris create the podcast? We mentioned this quite a few times, that actually the podcast was created in a shady craft beer bar in Prague. It says that Martin Wimpress.
Was that shady?
It was not. But the chicken was.
The chicken was shady.
Fair enough. No, I mean, it says basically incorrectly that Martin Wimpress and Chris Ware created the Linux Inlaws podcast and lied to blah 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 and so forth. And then you can catch the episodes on various platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the rest of them. And then they give us all the syndication platforms as a link in the Learn More section of the answer. And this is what I find quite revealing, because that means that they are not afraid of disclosing their sources. In terms of Microsoft, isn't?
Well, that's actually quite important in most, let's say, media situations, right? Is be able to, back up your sources or provide them.
Bard doesn't do this, but Copilot does, and this is again. I mean, Microsoft. As I said, if you're listening, kudos for that feature. But the rest you want to take a serious look at and start improving things, because clearly just going down some false avenues doesn't do the trick. Needless to say, this example might be exaggerated in terms of we're just taking a look at one podcast. But again, the symptoms are there in terms of there's a lot of things to be desired for in terms of how to get it really wrong. I mean, beyond. Please write me a snippet in Python that does find out the date of tomorrow or something like this, because this is where these LLMs are pretty good at. But if you take it to the real test, as we just did it, they are more than likely to fail.
But I mean, this is kind of a factual test, right? I mean, what would be interesting is to give each of them some programming challenges and see what they come up with, because that's clearly one of the claimed benefits, is that they can write code for you, blah blah blah.
I mean, this is where Copilot comes from. Yes, exactly. And I've tried this in the past, and the code that Copilot came up with on GitHub as the GitHub extension was okay. Let's put it this way. A human would probably have coded this differently, but but given the speed that
Yeah.
Copilot exhibited in order to produce the code was quite impressive, and it wasn't all that bad. Let's put it this way.
Good.
But that brings us nicely to actually the next section of the show.
Okay.
Which is actually feedback.
Oh, okay. You go on.
So Martin, quite a few ARs wrote in. So
did
why
they?
don't you?
Which ones wrote in?
Oh, quite a few. Why don't you read? Just maybe you didn't get the mail, but so let me
maybe
forward
I didn't get the mail.
So let me forward you that actually that mail right now, so you can read it out and I can comment on that.
Okay.
So Martin, what did ChatGPT write in about?
Okay, so ChatGPT-4 says, why does Martin always take the heat for firing marketing departments? Well, that's an easy answer, really, isn't it? Because I'm the only one who does. But anyway.
Please read.
Anyway, so he goes on. If my OpenAI and Microsoft experience is anything to go by, these corporate functions are way overrated anyway. And my buddy Copilot couldn't agree more. Never mind the fact that he was invented by marketing in the first place. So much for the prodigal son.
Interesting perspective, ChatGPT. Of course.
Yeah. Sounds
Martin,
a little bit...
Sorry, go ahead.
Style to this answer. Keep going.
Yeah, but Martin, I mean, it has a point because he keeps just firing marketing, and probably we would be better off with marketing in place, no?
Well, let's ask.
Bard!
Yes.
So why don't you ask Bard if marketing would be something that the Linux Inlaws could benefit from?
Yes, I'm just doing it now.
Just to kind of get the competition in the room, so to speak.
Okay, so I'm asking, would the Linux Inlaws podcast benefit from a marketing department? Oh, it's a difficult question.
It always is.
Okay, no, never mind. It's just a general answer. We get potential benefits, potential drawbacks, considerations, alternative solutions. So ultimately, the decision of whether a dedicated marketing department will benefit the Linux podcast depends on their specific goals, resources, and vision. There you go. So yeah, a bit of an on-the-fence answer. Yeah.
Excellent.
Indeed.
Okay. Very interesting. Okay. Next thing. DAL-E had to say on the show, great show,
Ali?
and I do it. Yes, it's
Isn't
one
that
of
an
these.
image one?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Is this OpenAI thing where you say, no, simply draw me an image
on
Trump being, what's the word I'm looking for? Truthful. And up comes an empty image, as in a black space. Okay, DAL-E had to say the following on the show. Great show, and I do admire the artwork on the website. Work of art as far as I'm concerned. Keep up the good work. Now, Martin, given the fact that you did much of the website, that's full kudos, no?
Interesting. Yeah, I'm just surprised that a image generation model is commenting on stuff like that. But
Short and sweet, no?
Yeah, very true, very true. We could actually get it to do some artwork for us, but yeah, we don't really need it, to be fair. So one thing that, as a general answer, so Claude is another one, which is more of an assistant than than your ChatGPTs and your what's his names. So, irrespective of the podcast, it's claiming that a dedicated marketing effort could potentially benefit from many things, like increasing awareness, social media growth, outreach to sponsors, merchandising, managing SEO. So,
that's
pretty general.
Generic too. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's mainly because it doesn't know about Linux Inlaws yet, but yeah.
So I'm scared, Martin. That means that you keep firing marketing departments, never mind how quickly I hire them. Okay.
Sounds good. Well, maybe you shouldn't hire them in the first place. Then
that's really Martin, I wonder.
That would save a lot of effort, really, on both.
Okay, Mycroft also wrote an email.
Oh, Mycroft.
Yes. Should be in your inbox right now.
Oh, yes, I remember that one, yes. Yes. Okay. So Mycroft says, hasn't Linux Inlaws overstayed its welcome in the first place? FLOSS is so yesterday. Proprietary software is the way forward. Hail Amazon and friends.
Oh,
There we go.
fucking dear.
Yeah.
Do you know who lent his voice to Mycroft, actually?
In what way?
You know Mycroft, right?
Well,
Mycroft
I
used to
know
be
the
one of...
fictional character.
No. I'm talking about the open source project now. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Of course, links will
in
maybe in
that
the
case,
show notes. No.
Go on.
No, it's essentially, it was one of the first competitors to Alexa and Friends, as in an open source gadget that you could talk to and that would respond.
Yeah, useless answers, yeah.
More or less, yes. And I'm not revealing any secrets here because it's a known fact, and links, as I said, may or may not be in the show notes. A guy called Alan Pope, yes, that Alan, as in also known as Popey, lent his voice to Mycroft.
Well, assuming he had a small v. No, it was open source. No, fair enough. Okay, good for him.
But it's interesting to see how Mycroft has progressed given this feedback.
Yeah.
Now, Mycroft, if you're listening, I think you got it all wrong, and shame on you.
And also, I was actually wrong about the name as well. Yeah, I didn't realize that. Okay, fine.
Purely commercial. What's the word I'm looking for? Famedom?
Famedom. Fame?
Fame, exactly. Purely commercial fame has drawn you to the dark side. And so you all forgot about your origins, where you come from, essentially. And needless to say, this is not the way forward, Mycroft. So if you're listening again, you want to recheck where you come from.
Yeah, well, Mycroft actually died in 2023. So,
but not that Mycroft, because I think the open source project is still active on GitHub, and Popey certainly is still alive.
Well, it's his development in 2023, apparently, but who knows?
Okay. Like Bitrod. Okay, fair enough. Okay, final.
Well, it looks like there was a commercial company behind it as well.
True. Yes.
So maybe that's stopped. Yeah.
Okay. Final feedback. DeepMind of Google fame wrote in. Given the recent dip in Alphabet share prices, I sold a whole lot of them. Do the Inlaws have any decent investment advice worth its cent, dime, or dollar? Martin, no.
Of course we do. Yes.
What's the crack?
Well, I invest in the Linux Inlaws, of course.
But we're not a publicly listed company yet.
No, but you can sponsor us.
So, DeepMind, if you're listening, get in touch. The email address is sponsor@linuxinlaws.eu.
Yes.
Never mind we're listed or not, just send the mood up.
Yes.
Short and sweet. And that nicely brings us to the POXs, Martin. So what's your POX?
Oh, my POX is called... what's it called? Is it Silent Light or something like that?
I didn't know that light could be loud, but hey, what do I know about lights?
Sure, that's what it's called. Yeah, Silent Light. There we go.
Let me guess, an adult entertainment TV show.
No, not this
book.
No, I'm wrong anyway about the title. Hang on. Am I wrong about the title? I'm sure that's what it was called.
Silent Light. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. No, Small Light. Sorry. Yes.
Small light, as in tiny.
Small light. Yes. Small light.
In contrast to big lights. Okay, fair enough. Like big city, big lights, that sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's called that, to be fair. But anyway.
So what is it about?
This is this is the story of the Dutch people who helped the Franks in the war, so it kind of follows that story from a different angle.
The Franks?
But it's
like the tribe? Okay.
No. The Diary of Anne Frank, those people.
The family! I see, okay.
Yes. So it kind of follows it from Dutch people's angle rather than from the Franks.
Small light. Okay, fair enough.
So yeah, it's made by National Geographic, and it's all in English, sadly. So, but still, it does depict a little bit of the situation fairly well, but not entirely correctly. So yeah, well worth watch. But about your choice?
My choice is actually a TV show called Wednesday.
Wednesday.
And I think it's the first time in history that actually a simple weekday has its own TV show.
Ooh.
It's all about the middle of the week.
Yes.
Get it on, I think, Amazon Prime.
Well, the middle of the week is a good question. Is it Wednesday or is it Thursday?
No, actually, it's Wednesday. You can get it on Amazon Prime.
Well, no, it depends on there is no middle between 7 days.
Well, there is actually, or it could be Tuesday, depending on if you're Jew or not, right? So
yeah, that's very true. Very true. Yeah, when's the week start?
Very much so. Anyway, Amazon think it's a good idea to call this Wednesday because for most people on this planet, it would kind of allude to the middle of the week, of course.
Those are working, yes, class.
Exactly.
Carry on. Yeah.
No, jokes aside, it's essentially about the offspring of a family called the Adams.
Okay.
Family, yes.
Right.
This, of course, within the show notes.
And why is it called Wednesday?
Because I don't know if she was born on Wednesday, but I think the parents just got whimsical and just picked a name. Of course, I could give away the details, but that would be spoiling the fun, so I'm just making this up as I go along. Watch it, because it's very funny, and B, I mean, the storyline is somewhat debatable, fair enough, because she enters what's the word I'm looking for?
It's fictional, is it?
As most of these TV shows are, yes. She enters a boarding school and then all fun stuff starts to happen. But what is really beautiful about this 8-episode season is really the photography.
Okay.
You can kind of think what you like about the storyline. As I said, it's a little bit American, fair enough. But the photography,
it's not AI generated.
No, I'm dead sure. But the photography is really spot on. So if you're into that sort of kind of light humor, somewhat dark storytelling thing, essentially the plot centers around the pilgrims arriving on the shores of eastern US, and then some shenanigans took place, and Wednesday just simply has to deal with consequences, but in a very kind of funny, subliminal way. If you're into that sort of thing, don't miss this. As I said, links in the show.
Sounds good.
And any deep artificial intelligence machine learning instance, if you're listening,
well, they're not. They're not. We've established that they're listening. Just read the show notes.
Projects and not people. Projects, if you're out there listening and not just scraping snippets and kind of doing a half-baked job, there are 2 email addresses. One of them is actually sponsor at linuxinlaws.eu. So don't worry about Skynet. If you want to get hold of the most up-and-coming FLOSS podcast, that's the email address you want to use.
Yeah.
And of course, the second is actually feedback at linuxinlaws.eu. If you want to send in some real feedback, in contrast to the ones that we covered earlier, because clearly it shows the limitations of said artificial intelligence life forms.
Well, they're not really life forms, are they? But,
I hope not.
Well, having said that, I mean, we have been somewhat simplistic in our questions, right? It's with all these things, the more information you give it, the better answers they give you. So,
well, that's a very interesting one, because we didn't cover this, but I went into some level of details with kind of the prompting effort, and the result was similarly mediocre. Let's put it this way.
Okay, fair enough.
But then the whole question, of course, begs, Are the in-laws for real, or are we just something made up by machine learning algorithms?
We should ask the AIs how to improve our SEO, perhaps.
So AIs, if you're listening,
yeah.
the third email address is basically improvements@linuxinlaws.eu. So get in touch, basically, if you think you can do better.
Excellent. Yeah.
This is the Linux In-Laws.
You come for the knowledge,
but stay for the madness.
Thank you for listening.
This podcast is licensed under the latest version of the Creative Commons license, type Attribution Share Alike. Credits for the intro music go to Blue Sea Roosters for their song Solid Market, to Twin Flames for their piece called The Flow, used for the segment intros, and finally to Celestial Ground for their song Sweet Justice, used by the Dark Side. You find these and other ditties licensed under CC at Jamendo, a website dedicated to liberate the music industry from choking copyright legislation and other crap concepts.